Thank you very much. We're proud of you. We're proud of our teachers, Kyrgyzstan, and your gain knowledge will contribute into the Kyrgyzstan classroom and teaching children in our country. So good luck. Thank you. Anything else, Manisha, would you like?
No, I guess we're done.
Okay. So in this happy mode, we are going to start our second day of the conference, and let me present our presenter, Dr. Marina Milad. She is currently the Faculty of Language Studies Program Coordinator, Assistant Professor of English Language and Applied Linguistics at Arab Open University, Kuwait branch, and TESOL Kuwait past president. And she holds a PhD in TEFL Curriculum and Instructions from Cairo University with the grade of distinction. She also attained master level course in ESL and EFL assessment techniques from Indiana University, Bloomington, USA. Dr. Marina Milad is a great asset in providing professional development trainings and sessions for teachers, managers, employees of some reputable organizations. And we can say that she has participated and presented in several presentations in local and international conference in the field of language learning. Today, Dr. Marina Milad is presenting her topic on translating constructivism in pedagogy from philosophy to practice. Welcome, Dr. Marina.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you for amazing yesterday, and hopefully today is going to be as successful as yesterday. My main concern and research concern all the time is on applied linguistics and TEFL and TESOL. And the courses I'm chairing and preparing for Arab Open University are related to applied linguistic discourse analysis, grammar in context, TEFL, how to teach students teacher to become a teacher after graduation, studying many techniques, approaches, strategies of learning, and of course studying assessment methods, studying classroom management, and many other domains that they can tackle or should tackle as undergrad before the graduation and going to the real field of TEFL. So I had the opportunity to work with the theory, and then I tried to apply the theory in classroom. So in our topic today, I'm asking you why constructivism? What is constructivism and why constructivism is important to our TEFL and TESOL classrooms? Who can discuss with me? Would you like to keep the question till the end, or we can have some sort of interaction?
I can jump in.
Yeah, please do.
Because we believe nowadays that knowledge is co-constructed. So we need to make sure that how we see teaching and the methods is connected to that.
Very good. Thank you so much. Of course, the concept of constructivism is very old one. It's not a new one. And many people would say, this is old-fashioned. We should go and search for new techniques and new theories. Why sticking to that constructivism? Actually, constructivism has been developed throughout the ages and throughout the whole previous decades. The educators tried their hard to make it more compatible with the era we are living in, especially now with the use of technology. That's why constructivism has transferred into connectivism. And that's why we have many definitions to constructivism as a way of building blocks to construct knowledge and build on any previous knowledge and experiences. That's why also we can see that we have more than one principles for constructivism and more than one approach to apply constructivism in class, including cognitive and the, of course, social constructivism. So for the principles, you will be surprised that it's based on two aspects: the assimilation process and the accommodation process. For example, constructivism is considered a philosophy, and of course, it is about reflecting on any experience you've been through. Therefore, it has two aspects, the aspect related to our mind and the aspect related to our social background and social interaction with others in class or outside the class in general. As a theory, even before applying it in classroom, it's a theory in life about constructing knowledge and building on previous experience. So for the act of assimilation, we can see that as individuals, we try to have our own mental models based on our bad experiences or based on good experiences. So whenever we have been exposed to any experience, we can, or we start judging if it's a good one or a bad one, and based on, we're going to assimilate this experience and categorize it in the right position: happy memory, sad memory, and all of these things. But also constructivism is related to accommodation. Later on, after you start the process of categorization, this is good, this is bad, this is motivating, this is on, all of these are things that you can build on knowledge or derive knowledge out of that. And therefore, the process of accommodation would come when you start dealing with others and try to do a sort of concession or accommodating their own points of view and incorporating their own ideas into your own life. You don't have to accept all, but being able to accept the other's point of view and respect would help you to cooperate and be more communicative in general. Therefore, we say that there are two ways of translating constructivism into pedagogy. The first one has been presented by Mayer in 2004, which is hands-on activity. I can help my students to be very effective in acquiring a skill, in acquiring a content by using constructivism, which is basically related to hands-on activity, or what we used to call it learning by doing. And another evident approach to transfer it is by doing the construction of knowledge, which is related to the cognitive constructivism. So Vygotsky came with the discovery model of learning, and he said that whenever I try to encourage my students to discover more about a certain aspect, or even give them building blocks and ask them to build something out of it, or giving them a toy and ask them to analyze it, what are the components or the parts of it, all of these are related to how you help or how you use the discovery model in learning, and of course in our domain, language acquisition. Another one was according to Vygotsky as well, is that individuals cannot learn individually all the time. They need the other human factor, where they interact with others and listen to their points of view. Exactly like what happened yesterday. We listened to amazing presentations about creativity, amazing presentation about the design thinking, and then we started doing all this discussion. This is also related to social constructivism. I benefited from the discussion, and I believe many of you have benefited a lot from the discussion. And this is, again, not only related to my cognitive constructivism and building on what my previous knowledge and what is the new one I added to it, it's built on the social interaction with peers and especially colleagues who are working in the same field. So based on this, we found a lot of educators trying to adopt this translation model, like Sahakian and Ghunaim in 2007. They came up with a model called the constructo-active model, since constructivism is mainly related to active learning. So they tried to build a model where they approach or help their learners to approach the content of the course, which is, of course, was English language, teaching TEFL, teaching English as a foreign language, and try to build on knowledge and understanding and experience and values and ethics until they reach the production level. They come up with an end product that is related to the end or the desired intended learning outcome of this TEFL course. Of course, all of this happened in encouraging environment where construction and feedback are a must, and all of these were external factors while they were trying to apply the process of constructivism to build their knowledge and to help them to acquire the language effectively. Another model that I adopted in my study or in my application with AOU students is a Johari window. This is a model related or designed by Joseph Loft and Harry Ingham in 1984. It's a very old model, yet the model has been updated by educator over the years. The model is mainly related to how can you communicate with each other. The model is related to the social constructivism. How can you derive knowledge, understand knowledge by mainly looking at what sort of knowledge I have and what sort of shared knowledge I can share or receive from my colleagues or my classmates. So here we have 4 windows, as we can see in the slide. Hopefully you can see the slide. In the first window, this is the open free area where the students know something and the other or his classmates are knowing the same thing. And this is the open free area. It's exactly when I teach my students, for example, some approaches or some linguistic terms, and I give them the content and we discuss it in class. This type of knowledge is familiar and is known by self and by others. So this is what happens in the classroom. Yet there is another aspect where the knowledge might be known to others, might be known to your surrounding or your classmates, but it's unknown by self. And here we call it the blind area. And without the act of social constructivism and without the act of cooperative learning, the student in the blind area will not be able to step away from it and go to the open free area where knowledge is shared and cherished. Then we come to the third window, where the information or the knowledge is known by self. I know something, but it's unknown to others. And this is what we call the hidden area. You have something and you didn't share it yet. Why I'm not sharing it? Because they might embarrass me. I might sound silly. They might mock at what I'm saying. So again, with the encouraging environment, you can, as a teacher, help your students to have this self-disclosure and exposure to others and learn how to express their ideas and share their knowledge without fear and building their self-trust. Then we come to the fourth window, which is the unknown. This is unknown by self, unknown by others, and therefore the teacher intervention and the cooperative learning, again, with the use of self-discovery, shared discovery, and other factors where everyone, including the teacher, are working together on a task or on a given activity in order to achieve the intended learning outcome of knowledge acquisition, and especially in our case, language acquisition. So these are the 4 windows I tried to apply, and I searched in reviewing literature in order to see if others have used these windows before. So I found that in 2004, for example, Thurlow tried to apply the 4 windows in order to build a task-based introduction to computer-mediated communication. and he renamed these 4 windows into the open explicit window, where everything is clear and shared with the students, and the implicit one, where the student has to figure out or elicit what's going on and what sort of knowledge we're talking about from his peers through feedback and through interaction. Again, all of these are 4 factors of cooperative learning. And the embedded or hidden one, where they have to interact more and give more feedback, and especially the incidental unconscious one, where it's unknown area. And this unknown area is related to the term incidental learning. Incidental learning is a term has been used a lot, especially that it happens unconsciously. Like if you're on the mall, for example, and you want to order pizza, what can you say? How can you order pizza? So this incidental learning is based on language function, teaching the students some language function. I want to make a phone call ordering pizza. I want to go to the doctor or the clinic and book an appointment. I want to go to the mall and start buying some toys. What should I say? How can I say it? All of these are situation, and this is what is related to the task-based approach, or how the task assigned to the student as a project, for example, a project work, would help them to acquire language unconsciously. So if you ask your students, go and research something, or ask people in the mall what type of video games or what type of arcade they are playing, or any other projects you ask the students to do, this is going to be very effective, because they will learn something unconsciously. So in our application at AOU, applying the Johari window model in AOU, I asked my students teacher who are studying TEFL course, design or write a lesson plan talking about a specific theme. Every semester we have a new theme, one theme about different cultures, one theme about healthy food and diet, one theme about social values, one theme about technology and diversity, culture and diversity and technology, a lot of things. And then I asked them to write a lesson plan and then come to class and give demo class presentation, acting as a teacher, presenting this lesson plan to your peers. And of course, all of us, including myself, are going to be acting as students. So here the aim was to get the students to experience both implicit learning and explicit learning, which is going to have also incidental learning as an integral part of the learning process. So for the first window, or the first box, the students started by exploring what sort of background knowledge and information is common among them, and how can they develop a lesson plan. Of course, the idea of writing a lesson plan was totally new to them. So that's why they started asking themselves, and of course, asking me to provide the knowledge and provide a template. These are the main components. These are the main sections. And here we're going to write this, and here we're going to write that. And then I left them to the second stage, where some people might be more aware of how to write a lesson plan, and some other students might need more support. So they were encouraged to exchange knowledge and understanding, and try to gain more understanding by communicating with each other and giving feedback to each other. Then we moved to the third window. We ask them to start cooperation more, in order to make sure that everyone can voice his fear, everyone can voice what sort of knowledge he has and he wants to share with others. So all of them started the process of reading about the theme, reading about designing lesson plans, reading about classroom delivery and how they are going to conduct their presentation. They started doing all the analysis and they started having these shared information among each other. So in the final stage, which is related to the incidental learning or unconscious learning, that this helped the students to explore potential areas. These are the areas that I can further develop. These are the points that I need to know about. How far did I gain up till now? I learned about this, I learned about that. Of course, using a checklist or using an inventory, they can you can start by asking them by the end of each session, what have you learned today, as a sort of reflection on what they have learned. And it's a sort of reflection on your teaching as well, to know what went well, what you need to consider next time, what are the points you missed this session, so next lecture or next session you're going to compensate that. So here, this is a sort of learning and acquiring knowledge unconsciously as incidental learning. So the tools I used in this study were the rubric for assessing the lesson plan structure. Did they abide by the structure or did they follow another different structure? Of course, there are hundreds and hundreds of templates of writing lesson plans, depending on the school, depending on the institution or the university. Each institution has its own way of designing the lesson plan. I asked them to stick to the model presented for them. Then an observation checklist to assess students, teachers, demo class presentation, to assess their performance in the presentation, starting from the way they were dressed up in suits or in formal attire, and the way they started using a lot of visual aids. I encouraged them to use a lot of links like Kahoot. Yesterday, one of the presenters was talking about the Kahoot, where they used the Kahoot game in order to get the class to interact. And of course, this is a very, he was talking about grade 5. And our lesson plan is designed for grade 4-5. So they used Kahoot, they used a lot of open sources videos, and came up with their own activities and discussion, and asked the students to interact and do some games based on the videos they watched and all of these things. So all the content, the poses, the talking time, the teachers talking time, the students talking time, the in the presentation stage, and the students' role in the practice and application stage, all of these have been assessed in the checklist. Then a questionnaire for assessing the students' views of this instructive, constructive approach. Do you find it very constructive or destructive? It helped you in building knowledge, or you didn't like this group work? Because you would be surprised that some of the students would come and tell you, I don't want to present in front of the class. Can I present in your office? Simply as this, because again, the sort of cooperation is not new. Of course, this is an old concept, but that sort of cooperation might not be relevant to their culture or relevant to their routine at home. And of course, it depends on many other factors, like their learning style, like their multiple intelligences, brain color, a lot of things that I investigated in other papers. But in this case, I just focused on their general evaluation of the whole experience. So surprisingly, they loved the experience. Surprisingly, or maybe I would say it was expected, but a little bit I found some resistance. Not all of them, and unfortunately, I just started my presentation saying that at Arab Open University we have open doors, so we have different age group. So this high age group tried to be more dedicated and more committed, but the young age group performed better in the classroom interaction. So they were excellent in preparing the lesson plan and writing them according to the criteria, following all the instruction. But when it came to the actual presentation in classroom, they were a little bit less interactive. I don't want to say less interactive than young generation who were very energetic and interactive and used a lot of modern and updated tools of teaching and bringing technology into the classroom. So these are some responses or the data representation of the students' responses. And as you can see, it's very hard. Now we come to our own conclusion. And now my question to you, please. What are some of the differences that you can allocate or list between the traditional teacher-centered classroom and the constructive learner-centered classroom based on what we discussed so far? Who can tell me?
Can I answer?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. In the traditional teacher center, the teacher is trying to fit the knowledge, while in constructivist learner-centered classroom, the learners are actively involved and trying to scaffold the knowledge that they have. That's what I think.
Okay, so it's related to the point of scaffolding. This is your first point, right?
Right.
Okay, so the one who's going to be constructive is definitely going to apply scaffolding, helping the students to assimilate knowledge into chunks, helping the students to see a connection between what he or she is presenting in classroom and real life situation, helping them by providing them with authentic material. So definitely scaffolding is one of the most important points. Thank you so much, Lassama. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
Miriam just wrote, learners learn by doing instead of by listening.
Exactly. Hands-on activity, learning by doing. Excellent. We mentioned this. Sorry, I can't read the chat now. So if you find any comments or answers, would you please read them, Manasya? Thank you.
Sorry. So students take ownership of their own learning because they are engaged in their own learning. Because as it has been said, yeah, so students are learn by doing something.
Oh, very good. So up till now, we talked about scaffolding, we talked about learning by doing, and now we are talking about initiation, to take the initiation and to be initiative. Of course, if I don't trust my students and I don't tell them that I do trust their choices of assessing or their choices of any tools to be assessed based on, in this case, they will not feel initiative. And this sort of having a sense of initiativity is going to be reflected in having a sort of creativity. So they will not be capable of voicing their concerns or their demands, and they will not try to step out of the box and come up with a new idea in their classroom presentation, because they would be afraid that this idea might not be received with good feedback from the tutor, and thus my grade is going to be affected. So that's why from the beginning, the teacher or the constructive teacher should put a clear measure with the students that we have here a cooperative environment where we encourage participation, encourage interactions, mistakes are tolerated and corrected in a decent way. All of these are related to the characteristics of a constructive teacher. What else? Who can add more?
Student choice is taken into account, so students can choose the topics they would like to research. They can choose the partners they would like to work with. They can choose home assignments that they would like to do.
Also, students' voice is heard by the teachers, so they can express their opinion freely. So they are not afraid of making suggestions. So they feel free in a positive and friendly atmosphere.
Excellent point. This point is mainly related to choosing interesting topic. If I can't get the students to be interested in my material, I would lose them. If they are not interested, they will not be motivated to learn. And another major point of getting them to be motivated to learn is to tell them what is expected from them and giving them a model which is required, so they will know what is the intended learning outcome. This is the shape, or this is the model, or this is the way I want you to produce your work. But there is room for innovation. You can choose. We have a theme, the main umbrella, but you can choose whichever topic you want to talk about. For example, we have social values, but you can talk about friendship, you can talk about respect, you can talk about honesty, you can talk about cooperation, you can talk about any aspect or anything related to social respect. We are talking about a main theme of culture. You can talk about any culture you want. You can talk about your own home culture, hometown culture, or another different culture that you are interested in or read about, and you want to share the information in class with others. All of these are important. So this is another important point, which is topic of interest, giving them a topic that is really interesting to them.
So Marian, we have a few more additions here. There's a lot of autonomy in learning, is one of the comments. Miriam said learning in context. Rubina said the thing you are adding to start a constructive learning process is useful for others. I believe that's what she means to say. And then there is much scope for differentiation in learning, is the other comment.
Excellent point. Thank you. Thank you all for the feedback. Of course, so what I'm presenting now is a very brief distinction. You covered most of the points and you added more. And by doing this, this is our conclusion for the presentation. Of course, I hope you can make a difference. You can decide to be traditional teacher or constructive teacher, cooperative, and giving them all the support they need. Of course, the choice is yours, and thank you.
So we have
Any
our
questions?
first question. Yep.
Okay.
How do you treat discussion on critical issues, for example, politics or equality?
Of course, we have our own rules. Everything can be discussed as long as you discuss it with a reasonable way. Like, for example, you want to talk about equality. Give me some logical reasons why equality is important. Give me some emotional reasons. Give me some social reasons. All of these are related to aspects of the discussion. Discussion all the time is related to debate. You cannot, when we discuss even at a class level, it's a debate. We discuss, you try to convince me, I try to convince you. So you have to be scientific, and sometimes you have to be philosophical. So give me all the reasons, the social aspects, the economic aspect, the logical aspect, the affection aspect, and then we can talk. Why not? Especially if it's under the control of the teacher, you can talk about any topic in class as long as you have a framework. So they will be abiding that my talk is going to be related to social factors or economic factors or scientific factors. They will not deviate from these points if you said, but whatever they are going to say, it's related to their preference. Whatever they are going to say, it's related to their own reflection, as long as it is categorized under one of these categories. I hope this answer is satisfying. If you have
I think-
any further questions related to it.
The other question is, what are the things you are adding to start constructive learning to be useful to others? I think that was Rubina's question. What are the things you are adding to start constructive learning?
The cooperative learning. We're adding the hands-on activity. We're adding the scaffolding technique. We're adding moving from being traditional teacher into being a constructive teacher by adding all of these. So what we can add to literature today is a blend of all these modern, it's not modern, I don't want to say modern, these new perspective, especially then that constructivism has been developed nowadays into the term of connectivism, which is related to the social constructivism, connectivism via internet, connectivism via having group work, connectivism via network across countries. This is a feature that is easily attainable nowadays in comparison to years ago, where we used to have this pen pal friend. Now we have by email and chatting, and we can be exposed to a variety of points of view and varieties of ideas. And this is constructivism. This is the new technique, adding and building knowledge based on interaction with others. So this is what we are taking away: cooperation and collaboration.
Thank you so much. We have a lot of
Any
chat
more
comments in the chat saying thank you, nice presentation, thank you for your wonderful
you.
presentation. So hope you'll
Thank you
have
so
a
much.
chance to check those out later.
Okay, do we have any more questions?
I think we have one more question. Agne says, how do you break shyness in a group activity? Shy children don't like to contribute to the group discussion. So how do you handle the situation?
Yes, of course, we all, I believe, have faced this. As I told you, I faced some students, although I'm talking about adult students, not young learners. They tried to convince me that they don't want to present in classroom. They want to present in my office, not in front of the others. So one by one, step by step, I start building or trying to get them to build trust. For example, I would ask them to be observant at the beginning. You don't have to start. You don't have to be the first one who's going to present her or his lesson plan. Just watch, and I'll give you a second chance if you feel that after watching or observing some of the learners or other students, you want to present and you feel that you're dissatisfied about your performance, there is a second chance for improvement. And it happened a lot. They would say, but I missed this, can I repeat it? I would say, okay, after we're done with all the other students, I will, by the end of the semester, I will ask you to repeat it. And they would surprise me by gaining a lot and exchanging a lot of information with others based on just being observant. This is what we were talking about in Johari's window. Johari window is not new. It's very old technique and model, but the way we are using it nowadays with the use of technology and the artificial intelligence and all these new methods and approaches, it has been proven to be effective even in 2023. Any more questions? Is it okay, or do you want any more elaboration on this question?
I think that's perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Perfect timing, amazing timing. Here's a question. Are your classes monolingual or multilingual? In other words, do they come from the same background?
Of course not. Multilingual, because in Kuwait, we have variety of nationalities. We have a lot of expats. So we have Kuwaiti students, we have students from the MENA region, from Lebanon, Egypt, Jordan. We have students from India, Pakistan. We have students sometimes from Romania. It depends because it's an open university, and the country is, we can say that Kuwait is cosmopolitan a little bit because it attracts a lot of expats from different nationality. That's why I had another study. I published it, I guess in 2022, was talking about the difference between the homogeneous group work and heterogeneous group work. And of course, and it was related to the multiple intelligence and the brain color. And of course, surprisingly, at the beginning, you would find that the homogeneous are working better or at clever at finishing a task. But by the end, when they get to know each other, by the end of the semester, genius were more effective in the quality of the product they are performing. If you ask them to make a dialogue or to write a story or to come up with anything, any end product, by the end, or analyze, because it was, I applied this in a linguistic course, in discourse analysis. I found that the heterogeneous group were more or gave me more effective results in analyzing the given text, because they have different perspectives, different background information. Again, this is constructivism. They built on each other's knowledge and idea. So constructivism is there all the time.
Thank you so much. Shall we take a 6-7 minute break? And then after that, we will have our next presenter, whose name is Dr. Kate Mastruserio Reynolds. Hi.
Thank you. Thank
And
you
I
so
also
much.
wanted to say thank you. Welcome to all the people who were not able to come on time because of their electricity problem in Kyrgyzstan. We know about that, and we understand. And welcome. I'm glad you made it. Glad everybody made it. So let's just, if you guys need to take a break, and we will start exactly, recommence at 9 o'clock exactly, if that sounds okay with everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Marine Milad.
Yeah, thank you. It was wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank
Okay,
you for
see you
inviting
soon
me.
in the break.
See you. Bye.
Does anybody want a cup of tea? I'm going to make some for myself.
Yeah, you can pass. Perfect.
They're an intro to what I'm going to say later on, but let's hear
Okay.
Kate first.
That makes
Perfect.
sense. That makes sense. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the online world of learning and the Kyrgyzstan KG-TESOL wonderful conference, the day 2, for the second half of day 2. My name is Miriam Oppenheimer from the online world of learning, and I'm happy to present our second speaker, technically, of the day. And her name is Dr. Kate Mastruserio Reynolds from the Central Washington University in the United States. She is a professor of TESOL. She worked for many years as a director in Virginia. She worked in Qatar, and she worked in Wisconsin for 14 years. As you can see, the name of her presentation, because you know how to read. I'd like to also bring to everyone's attention the interesting and multidisciplinary aspect of her work. We were talking yesterday about multidisciplinary work or cross-disciplinary work. She has written a book about being an ally to LGBTQ people, and that's about to be published on the combination of those two, is TESOL and how to be an ally. And this is her, I think this is her third book that she has written. So we are very, very happy and proud to welcome you to our conference. And Thanks so much for being here. It's really great and wonderful to have such a great diversity of people at our conference. So thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Okay. Well, for me, it is good morning. What time is it for all of you? Is it early or is it afternoon?
Everybody's different.
Everybody's different. Okay. Well, good morning, good evening, and good night. So it is a pleasure to be here, and thank you for a warm welcome. So today I'm going to talk about the keys to preparation, strategies for exploring topics, and pre-writing. This has come out of some of my instructional work with undergraduates and graduates in Washington State, because we're trying to increase literacy within the state. We want to make sure that the students are coming out of high school with pretty strong writing skills going into college. And right now it's kind of a bleak time because in terms of teaching writing, because many of the students aren't reading as much as they used to, right? So the numbers of readers have really fallen. They might be watching TikTok videos, but they're not picking up a book, or they might be reading a short little article, but they're not reading a longer piece or something that involves a lot of depth. So with that in mind, it becomes even more critical to try to make that bridge between reading and writing, and get students into writing in a way that's scaffolded and approachable for them. So I am very happy to be here. One thing I want to mention, I will have an image of my book at the end. Some of the stuff comes from this book. I don't think you can see it right now. I hate when the screens cover it in the back. So I'll have a picture of it at the end. So, and if you have any questions, please ask when you're ready. You might be wondering to yourself why I have a field being plowed here. And really, the plowing in the field makes the plant a good harvest. If you don't plow it well, there will be all kinds of weeds and other things in the soil, so that the seeds will constantly be fighting and in competition with the seeds will be in competition in terms of growth with grass or other things coming up in the field. So it's really important to be focusing on the preparation soil in order to yield a harvest. And that's the same kind of pattern that we see when it comes to teaching writing, because it can be a very difficult process if a student doesn't go through some developmental stages to get there. So Alexander Graham Bell said, before anything else, preparation is the key to success. And I have to say this because, you know, I held up my book earlier, and I honestly would not be able to do this sort of writing if I hadn't been taught these different techniques and been teaching them for years and years and years. And now I've gotten writing down to almost a science for myself. I still have to turn in some TESOL proposals for next year in Tampa. That's due June 1st. So I'm putting the word out there for you. Please put in your proposals for next year at TESOL, June 1st, 5 p.m. Eastern time. So I have to get that writing done. So you'll see here in this image, this is just a very simple kind of mind map with information about birds migrating. So when we're talking about any sort of literacy moment, the reading and the writing are completely intertwined, right? And we want to make sure that students have a way to lay out what they're learning, to be able to visualize it. Because if it's all locked in your head and then you just start trying to put things down in order, there will be it will be a more difficult and clunky approach to writing. So my daughter's always laughing at me because she is doing all these college essays to go to college next year. And the first question I ask her is, what is the prompt? And the next question I ask her is, have you done your pre-writing? She gets it from my husband and I. He's an English professor as well. So I learned about the process approach to writing when I was a fresh person, a first year at university. And for anybody who might not know, and I know this is a big review for a lot of people, but if anybody's not familiar with it, It's where you're going to be doing a plan at the beginning, and you're going to discuss that plan with your students. Give them an outline so they know what's coming up, like an advanced organizer, and they know what the dates are. Even if you have something written on the board where the dates are listed and what they will be doing for what period of time. It includes rubrics, though, too. And this is something that years ago, I started trying to make sure all of my rubrics came out the minute the prompt came out, so I could tell them really what I was looking for. So that's a big part that we're not going to get into today, but that is a big part of laying it out for our students. I have found with my students, whether they're in second grade and they're writing about mammals, or they're in 5th grade and they're writing about a mystery, or if they're in 10th or 12th grade and writing about, you know, their approach to solving a world problem. Whatever that topic is, we need to help them identify and discuss an authentic audience. So for me, an authentic audience is if I can find a real audience for my students, I do that. For example, I might have them write a letter to the editor of newspaper, trying to give them that real audience. So they don't necessarily have to mail these things, but they do need to identify that the audience is other than the teacher, because if they perceive that the audience is the teacher, there's a lot of things that they know, and they don't want to rephrase that, right? So the next part, and often in a traditional approach to a writing, it's the brainstorming topics. And that can mean making lists or taking notes or talking to others or observing. We're going to talk about some of these different approaches in a bit. Learning more and finding more sources comes in. So we might do a visit to what the research literature shows at different processes. At different times, we might revisit the research literature. We might look for some sort of support, because we want our learners to be able to bring in other readings about the topic. Outlining it with a cognitive map, something like that, as you saw with the migrating birds. And noting those connections between ideas is really important. Recently, I did some work with Deborah Suarez and Andy Curtis on leadership in English language teaching. And we used a technology called Miro. And I will put that in the chat box so you all can take a look. I think our organizers would probably appreciate if you would not use it until after the talks and after the conference. So it's called Miro, and it's a big spreadsheet. And you can type things on and move things around. It's very easy. So to kind of create that mind map, if you really wanted to go technological. One of the nice things is you can draw lines between ideas on that. And again, we find more sources. We prepare our first draft, and usually that's the hardest part for the student, is getting things down. And I like to ask students to write chunks at a time because it's more manageable. It scaffolds for them. And then hopefully the student will read their draft critically. Often I ask them to just read it out loud to themselves, whisper read it to themselves. They'll revise, they will proofread for errors at some point if they can find them. And that helps with that self-monitor, crash and self-monitor. We want them to be able to monitor their own production and find their own issues within their language. Whenever they can do that, they are going to be able to strengthen their language, their reading, their writing, and their speaking and listening on their own. Finally, receiving feedback, formal feedback about their writing. I don't send anything out without my husband reading it. So I finished an article this past week and it went right to my husband. Thank goodness he's an English professor. And then preparing the second draft, and then the evaluation of the writing by a teacher or a peer at the end. So you might be saying, oh, this is old news, but I think we're going to now start getting into more interesting new information. So the biggest instructional strategy that I have been enjoying using recently is to model the writing task by using a mentor text. And a mentor text is basically a text of any kind. It can be short, it can be longer. They should be relatively easy to read. So maybe slightly underneath the comprehensibility of the learner. So a little bit easier for them to read so that they can see the patterns within it. And you are going to engage in direct instruction on the specific form within writing. So you might have them read a mentor text on a topic like a newspaper article if they're going to be writing a newspaper article. You can have them engage in discussion with the mentor text by asking questions about it, not just comprehension questions, right? So like, who is Clara Barton and why is she an important person that we need to learn about? Next is analyzing mentor texts, genre features, the text structures, and the language and signal words. So that's a really big one. So let's get into that. So every mentor text is going to be written in some sort of genre, whether it's an expository text, a description, whether it's some sort of narrative, whether it's argumentative. And to analyze those genre features, how is that set up? What are the text structures in that, and how is it organized? Will really help your students understand what they need to do. So it's modeling for them with a mentor text. I sat in on a presentation with Maria Estela Brisk, and I just love her systemic functional linguistics. She talks a lot about the fact that if we're not using something like a mentor text and showing how texts are put together, we're just asking students to write. We're not really teaching them to write, right? So it's definitely throwing them in the deep end. One of the things I've been working a lot recently is with specific language and signal words that go along with text structures. So for example, in a narrative, you're going to hear things like once upon a time, or next, then finally, that sort of thing, to show movement within a narrative, versus and two, or better than. So you're going to see phrases that are academic content phrases and signal words. So there's a video. I'm not going to play it, but you can watch it later because I'll share my slides. Everything's written on them. But I want to show you something that everybody these days is up in arms about. Everybody's so concerned about using ChatGPT, students using ChatGPT. And I don't know how many of you have engaged. I'm sure some of you have engaged with using ChatGPT. I actually just like to play with the art one. But my husband and I have been dabbling in it to get a sense of what it can do, what its limitations are, and basically it lies a lot. So, and it doesn't cite its sources; it makes up sources and things. So this is one way you can always protect yourself. You can say the essay you write has to have 5 unique sources that I can find online if I check them. So anyway, I asked it to write a 5-paragraph essay in third person. This is my prompt on the side for a comparison essay about The Outsiders, a book 9th graders read, between the book and a movie. I wanted a comparison essay between the book and the movie. And so you can see this is what it wrote. It actually wrote a pretty good essay. And I highlighted in yellow some of the key features of this, the first part, the introduction. It makes sure that the title and the author are front and center, whether it's the first thing that it talks about, or whether it's a little bit later in that sentence. Right away, it situates the topic, and it sets up for this idea of the teenage struggles and social divisions of the time, right? Because we know that's going to come up later. It has the the thesis down at the bottom. This essay claims to explore and compare these aspects. And then clear topic sentences in the paragraph 1 under character development, the book version of blah, blah, blah. And then finally, with green, you're seeing things like how it's developing off of the topic sentence. This is a very standard essay. This is for me how you can use ChatGPT. Before this came out, finding exemplar texts or mentor texts was really challenging. Sometimes we write them ourselves, right? I know I wrote a lot of them. And I would say, well, this is how it's set up, and this is how you do this, and this is how you do that. But to have them see the prompt similar to what you're working on, and they see it in action, how it's writing it, and how it's linking different sentences together, and you analyze it, they get a better sense of how to go about the writing process. So the most difficult and complicated part of the writing process, according to Yehoza, I think that's how you pronounce it, is the beginning. It really is that beginning of that journey. And a lot of our students, they dread this, right? This is painful. They would rather do anything else in the world, which just kind of bothers me because it's not that bad. And it's actually quite a personal sort of thing. And if we give them tools, that beginning won't be so daunting. It won't look like such a tedious job. So some other instructional strategies I have that I'm going to talk about are about idea generation and gathering. Students often have a really hard time determining what the topic is and gathering information and sorting and organizing information. So these are some of the pre-writing strategies. You may have noticed in the previous sentence or previous slide, some of them you might not even know what those are, but we're gonna go through those. We want to organize, whether we're asking students to just jot down and make a list, brainstorming. And I put individual there because recently I was listening to a book talk on National Public Radio here in the United States, and the author is a CEO of an organization. And she said, in terms of creativity, if you ask 3 or 4 people to sit down and generate new ideas, they will censor themselves. They will prevent ideas from coming to the table because they'll be embarrassed or intimidated by the process, and that they need to feel like things are correct before they share them. Whereas with brainstorming, we know that it should not be what is correct. It should be whatever comes to our minds, right? We can eliminate things later. So the author recommended that we engage in individual brainstorming, coming up with a list and then bringing it to the group if you're going to do a group project. Clustering, you can see the image in the third one at the bottom, clustering, putting things in connected spheres. Cubing. Cubing is one of the pre-writing strategies I like a lot. Imagine a cube with the topic inside of it. And the top face would be some sort of association with that topic. The bottom face is an argument for or against it. The front face is description. And then the left face is comparison. The right face is analyze it. And the back face is apply it. So students really enjoy this sort of thing because it's very three-dimensional. So you could have them print out, and there are die online that you can download and fold and have them write, these areas on their cube, and then go about completing that cube. And so it's a physical and an intellectual part of a strategy. Strategic questioning is one that I haven't used a lot, but I'm seeing it more and more in the research literature. And that idea of asking sort of journalistic questions, being strategic in your thinking. How does this work? Why does it work this way? Quick writing, interviews and dialogues. I think interviews and dialogues, especially if you want students to learn about something from an authoritative source, to be able to allow students to go out and interview or to have a dialogue with someone in the professional arena. That can be a very informative can be an informative experience, can provide informative set of data for the learner to share with the class that the class doesn't know about. So one of the things that I have seen recently in my daughter's high school, they needed to go out and observe or talk to a professional in their future career and find out about their future career. So she wants to go into archaeology. And so she set up an interview to go talk to some people, and immediately she had some excellent data to talk about, well, is this a really good career for me or not? Am I happy with this? Number 9 is free writing. And it's different from a quick write because free writes it doesn't necessarily have a time limit on it. It's just kind of stream of consciousness, whereas quick writing, you're putting down longer ideas than jotting, but in a rapid succession. So these are some of the pre-writing strategies. Let's go more into the ones I mentioned earlier that were a little bit oddly named. So pre-writing strategy number 1, all about. And the description of this one is the writers write everything they know about a topic. They aren't guided to, they're guided to self-question, to look up what they don't know. But the idea is that they get everything down in their brains as quickly as possible. You could use a KWL chart for this. So the process is write for about 2 minutes. Reread their writing. Think, pair, and share about something surprising about the list. If things are wrong, explain that sometimes we need to think we know something, but when we read more and we do more research, we realize that maybe we misunderstood something. So when they're seeing it from a distance and seeing the idea away from what's all going on in their heads, they're more likely to be able to see that, oh, I thought I knew this, but I guess I didn't. Number 5 is you reread your list again and you think about that list. And that's where you want to get into self-questioning, asking students to take notes on it. Where do they need to look up more? What don't I know? What am I unsure is true? And then we want to model those lists. Before we ask them to do anything, we'll always model how we would go about doing it. We want to make sure that as we're doing this strategy, we have put a check mark on the side of the things that have been double checked and that the writer is sure is accurate. And then finally, put a question mark on the side of things that our author is unsure about. So that's the first pre-writing strategy to share with you today. The second one is better questions. And I really like this visual here. I like to have visuals in everything I do, but this visual makes me really happy because students can see the different kinds of STEM sentences they can ask themselves. So then they can say, oh, I want to understand better the relationship between 2 things. So these are some of the questions I can ask my own list. Okay. So this is a very good resource for us in terms of asking better questions. This strategy is about avoiding giving students research questions or a format and to teach them to generate their own questions to research and write about. So this is a little hard, right? Not giving them any sort of format, it's a little scary. But once you've already worked through several rounds of different writing processes, writing genres maybe that you've been working on them with, this sort of thing becomes a little easier to do and more second nature. So this isn't a strategy I'd use right away within the school year. The process is that the students are write all about from the previous one for a peer as the peer audience. And the peer writes down questions on a sticky note and gives it to the speaker. The speaker writes the questions into their notebook and then adds questions to the list to spark their own thinking. And then they switch roles so they can help prompt each other to dig deeper. The next strategy 3, is to take notes. And we all know that students should be taking notes. We all know that that taking notes is going to reinforce their understanding of things, make things more comprehensible to them, longer retention, everything. But this taking note strategy is really avoiding that copying from a resource and avoiding the plagiarism, which is so difficult for all of us to try to get students who are unsure with their writing and their own thinking to move away from an authoritative source, right? So we ask students to read and take notes with the resource closed. So they've read, but now the source is closed, it's right there across the table, and then they have to start, what was that about, and reflecting on what was it about. Personally, I like to do this where I might read aloud a passage, a mentor text first. I might walk them through the different aspects of the mentor text, and then I might ask them to read it silently and then close the book, and then use Cornell note-taking method to identify the main ideas and when they're reading. For anyone who hasn't seen the Cornell note-taking method, it has a couple columns. On the far left-hand column, main ideas. And then across from that, in the middle column or the right column, all the details. And you just draw a line for every kind of different new point. And the bottom is a summary. And the summary, based on the research I've been doing with literacy in the last couple of years, that summary is the most important part. And it's the part that students skip the most. So they're like, oh, but I just wrote it up here. Well, the words are different. So we have to get them to understand that the summary is putting it all together in one nice, neat package. So then I would teach them to read for the main ideas and model it again. So I would be doing these kinds of things simultaneously. Then I'd ask them to read a short introductory paragraph with a peer, and as a whole class review their notes to make sure they're on the right track. And that's where we could put the check marks next to the things like, yes, this is a good fact for me to use. So these pre-writing strategies work together in a very lovely way. Sifting through the text is the fourth pre-writing strategy. And I love this because it makes things very concrete for learners. So it ensures that students see the relationship between information, the main ideas, the details, and the interesting facts. Then the students are encouraged to put the main ideas in boxes and details in bullet points. So as they're reading the passage, they would just put a box around what they think is the main idea. And then next to it, they just put a little bullet point. Next to other ones, they put a little bullet point. This is one of the details. So you can see here on grown to be sold about bananas and other cash crops. The main idea is in the square, some natural resources are sold in Africa. That's the main idea. And then the bullet points are called cash crops, grown on small farms. Large companies grow cash crops on plantations. That's one of the farm names. So they can identify, oh, okay, so here's the main idea, and it helps them break it apart, because we all know that when our multilingual learners are looking through text, they often give equal kind of weight to everything they're reading. So this is something that's very helpful for them to weight things as detail versus main idea. They can read a passage once all the way through. And again, it might be where you start with a teacher read aloud, then they read it, you check comprehension, you make sure that they understand it. And this is, again, using a little bit an easy passage. And then read again to put a bigger point or a box around the main ideas. And then the third time for putting the bullet points in. So by the end of a reading, they'll have read it several times, you'll have discussed it, and you'll have the students will have identified what they think the main ideas and the details are. Then once you've modeled this, they should be able to go to another passage for any research that they're going to do on their topic and use the same strategy. You might have to do it many times, so. Strategy 5 is words their way. And the description is demonstrate through using two paragraphs on the same topic that that specify information and details. That specific information and details do matter. So guide students to identify through questioning which paragraph shows the writer knows more about a topic. So basically you have two different ones, and you read them aloud, you talk about them, you talk about the parts of them, analyzing the mentor text and the texts, and then ask them to to look at those texts and which ones are better, which paragraph is better in terms of a good topic sentence, which one is better in its introductory, that hook, right? Which one is better in putting in those details and making connections between sentences? Which one is better in terms of the language that the author used? For example, did they use really interesting nouns or verbs or adjectives, right? So then you're kind of channeling their attention to these different angles to show them and illustrate what is good writing. How am I doing on time? Am I doing okay?
Yeah. How long do you think you're going to take?
Just another minute or two.
Please go ahead.
Okay.
This is amazing. I could have you go on forever because, you know, it's writing. But I know Maria has all dressed up. Look at her beautiful hair. So she's waiting.
Okay. Well, let me finish up here and then I'll turn the mic over to you, Maria. So this is asking the expert. And you encourage to students to ask the text and others about the topic. And it's not something we normally do, right? We don't say to ourselves, hello, text, tell me what you're about. You know, I mean, I know it's silly, but on some levels, that's what we're doing in our brains, is we're doing a lot of that questioning. And in order for students to see how they should be questioning a text and how they should be looking at the structure, we can teach them to do that and to really set up good questions within a reading, whether a fiction reading or a nonfiction reading. So the expert can be anybody, a peer, a caregiver, a local expert at a local museum or a library, and then they can create journalistic types of questions in advance to bring to their discussions with these individuals. After that, they can, during the interview, they take notes, and then they can go through, verify their information, and then use clustering to organize the ideas into some sort of organized flow for the essay. This is one of my favorites, I have to admit. It's called Ready, Set, Action. And we have so many resources for this now. One of my favorite things to do, because I live in the middle of nowhere. there is like one museum in town, and it's a cowboy museum. I'm like, oh boy. So it's not even an art museum or something. So I feel a little bit sometimes like out of it here. But what I do have is the internet. And there are so many virtual field trips. So one of my favorite things to do with young ones is to take them on a zoo tour of the San Diego Zoo. And they have live cams any day, any time of what the animals are doing. And they've got videos on like koalas hanging out at the trees with their babies. So cute, right? So what better to have the children actually looking and observing and understanding what they're seeing and putting that on paper. That's real. You know, that is real stuff. So there's tons of it. You can take them on a tour of the Louvre. You can take them all over the place. You can take them to the top of Machu Picchu. Tons of different places that you can visit with them. And you would want to have them choose an animal, or in this case, I chose animal because I was using the zoo as an example, to observe and find and to find one in the field trip. So I'd take them to the website and say, what kind of animals are there? Which ones would you want to observe? And then I would give them class time to do this using a graphic organizer to help them organize their thoughts. So what animal, where do they live? What climate? Well, koalas, they apparently really like hanging out in trees. They're not ground dwellers like squirrels, right? So nodding back to the squirrel discussion earlier. How do they find a mate? How do they have babies? What are other interesting details about this animal? Is it venomous? Is it a mammal that lives in the sea? So creating those kinds of questions for them, with them, to find out about their animal, and then having them an opportunity to observe and find out what they can, and then use other resources. Okay, I think this might be the last one. Stick it or flick it. This is when they're starting to feel overwhelmed with all of the information that they're finding, right? So you encourage the writers to revisit their, to read the readings and look at different sources. And on each different sticky note, you would write a topic or statement or something. If you're very concerned about the source, that's maybe where they would write their source in as well, right? So they put all their sticky notes out on the table, and they can move them around to cluster similar items. And then if it doesn't fit, if it doesn't work, if they can't figure out where to put it in, they can put it to the side and reorganize. And they have all the extras if they want to go to that later on when it comes to them. Oh, I think I can put this in. They don't really lose any information, but the idea is, okay, you got to keep it or lose it. But they won't really probably lose it. They'll just move it to the side. So those are my instructional strategies that I've been teaching my students recently to use, because I think they delve into that beginning, making it less challenging. And so they're in for the long road, and then they can enjoy their writing a lot more, because when we have the plan, it's relatively easy. So it can be done. I don't know if we've got any time for questions. I'll turn to our...
We've got time. Yeah.
Okay, so is there any one thing you would like to take from this presentation, remember from this presentation, or a concept that resonated with you? I notice Gulruk mentioned it's very informative. Just my curiosity, do you present or prefer to present orally or through written communication? I just think they're different. I don't have a preference. I think there are times I really just want to be with somebody in person, right? And I don't want to have to go through a medium of written word. But there are other times where that writing becomes then permanent. And I like the permanency of being able to put your thoughts down on paper. I'm a notoriously bad person for note taking. I have notes all over my house in piles on white pads. Because obviously I value it. But yeah, that's just kind of me. I don't know if y'all feel the same way. There was one up here. I thought I saw one. Right, Miriam. Yes, the ChatGPT. I would have them write dialogues or whatever you wanted them to show them as a model. That we don't have to spend our time to write it ourselves. We can get a decent exemplar. We can analyze it, and then they know, oh, the teacher knows about this. And we're more likely to get real things. We also have to share with them too that ChatGPT does lie. So I think this is one of the funniest conversations I hear with my husband and his students who are learning to write at university. And he's like, they lie. They're going to get you into trouble. They're like your bad friend. You know? Okay, well, you know, they always said in graduate school, if you get to the end of a presentation, people have lots of questions for you, then you've done a good presentation, but nobody's asking any questions. So I will just thank you. I pulled some of my ideas from Buckner, but I also have some of my ideas in my book. This is one I couldn't show you earlier, and this is just an introduction to TESOL. And I hope that, you know, you use some of these or one or two of these to put together a proposal for TESOL for next year in Tampa.
We did have one question in the chat. It was, do you find students skip some of the steps just to go straight to the end result?
Yes. Isn't that the challenge? It's always the student group who you put together with a complex task and you say, do each of the steps in order. And instead of them talking about the steps, they give steps to each other. And so they're not doing them in any kind of order, and it just kind of throws things together. That I guess is the way of students is we have to explain the purpose of doing it. And if they have a purpose, this is how it's going to help you. It will help you organize. It will help you confirm that your information is accurate. You know, I think if they understand the purpose for it, they're less likely to skip it. And if you tell them, I'm specifically looking to make sure that you have all your parts here, to make sure you've done it accurately and thoroughly, then I think they're less inclined to do that. But yeah, they want it to be done as quickly as possible. Yeah.
We also have Dr. Maureen Milad has raised her hand.
Oh, hello.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Kate, for this presentation. Of course, academic writing is one of the courses I chair and teach as well. and it's amazing. All the sticky notes and the ideas, I loved it. My question is related to ChatGPT, because you know this is the topic of the this month, let's say.
Right.
The artificial intelligence is obsessing us all. I have a problem with my students' assignments, especially at the university level. I feel that they are using it, and of course, sometimes Turnitin cannot detect it, unfortunately, because now there are other programs in artificial intelligence that can help you to paraphrase ChatGPT and avoid plagiarism. So the
Right.
problem is making me thinking that we're going to depend on paper and pencil in-class assessment. We're not gonna trust any assignment posted on LMS or submitted via LMS or Teams. Do you agree, or do you have any idea how can we fight it? Although I agree with you that sometimes ChatGPT is not providing accurate results and no citation, and you're totally 100% correct in that. And by the way, my son was having a presentation at Toastmaster to prove that artificial intelligence is not beneficial and all of these debate points. So he asked ChatGPT 2 + 2 equals, so ChatGPT answered 4. So he said, no, 2 + 2 = 5. And he started arguing with the ChatGPT, convincing it. So next time, or after a few minutes, he came back and asked ChatGPT 2 + 2. The ChatGPT gave it 5. So this is totally unreliable, and we have to tell our students to beware.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, a lot of people are going to handwritten in class. And you know, if you're requiring all the stages of the pre-writing, and you're walking them through it and you're giving them class time to do it, you're more likely to get something real from the students. But I will constantly go back to the statement that Brisk said, which was, make sure that you're teaching them how to write and not teaching them, you know, not throwing them in the deep end, not, you know, just saying, now write. That we're actually helping them and scaffolding them into that writing. And if we're doing that in class, we're going to be more likely to have something authentic. I doubt they're going to go home and, you know, get one typed up on ChatGPT and try to bring it into the classroom, but it's happening everywhere. So I think what's the expression? The cat's out of the box or something. So genie's out of the bottle. So yeah. I think we're all going to be dealing with that. So I am just
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so glad that y'all invited me to come and talk. And I will sit around in the next session for a few if anybody wants to chat on the text box. But I had a surgery last Wednesday, so I'm like a little run down today. I'm not my most chipper self. So I hope you'll forgive me. I'm apologizing for not being more energetic. Anyway, thanks again. Oh, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This was super useful. Wonderful reminders, wonderful techniques. So sorry we went over schedule, but sometimes it happened yesterday also. So I'm super happy to let everybody know about that. So everybody take a quick stretch. And then we are very excited and intrigued to hear our next presenter. She's from Serbia, and her name is Marica Kovac. I hope I said that right. She works at Webster University in Uzbekistan. And that's a university of hospitals and physicians. So again, we're talking about intersectionality and interdisciplinary work. So that's exciting. And she's going to be talking about process writing versus product writing. So that's exciting. And the title is Ideating Going Wrong. I'm sure you're going to introduce the definition of ideating. I had to Google it myself, but of course it's just forming an idea of, or imagining or conceiving of. So I'm super happy, and I'm looking forward to hearing from our next presenter. Thank you so much for attending, everyone, and welcome again to everybody who just came. We know that you had electricity problems in Kyrgyzstan, so thank you for persevering, and really happy to see that we have 44 attendees and stuff today. So that's wonderful. So with no further ado, thank you so much for coming, Ms. Kovac.
Hi. Hi, everybody. So let's see if we can get the presentation going first. So slideshow from the beginning. There we are. Now you see me, you hear me, everything is fine, right?
Great. Yes. Thanks.
Cool. Let's start. So design thinking 2. This is my second presentation in design thinking. I did the first one in the last conference, and I was so happy to be re-invited. That means that somebody liked the first one. So thank you so much for that. My name is Maria. I come from Serbia, and I wanted to comment on 2 things that people before me said. So we had the idea of collaboration with Dr. Marine, and we had being intimidated and scared when we share ideas with Kate, and there were a lot of post-it notes there. So I want to connect to that, if it's all right. So what do I do? Well, I teach at Webster University in Tashkent, but yeah, we don't have a medical department here, so no nurses, I'm afraid. Only English teachers doing their no worries. I'm just saying, if anybody wants a medical advice, I'm not the person to go to, right? Only you learn more about medicine as you grow older. So I do know more than I did before, but not as much as I would have to be able to recommend anything. Though I am learning, I'm afraid. So first things first, you got the name, you got where I work, and let me explain who I work with. So my students are graduate students in TESOL, and they're learning a lot of different things about methodology. I also have students who are education and innovation graduates, and I have had a history of teaching undergrads in English for a long time. So what am I up to now? Well, design thinking is a new thing for me, and I don't have a mathematical logical brain. So for me, it was something that designers would do, obviously, and not teachers, and I wondered what education had to do with it. Turns out it does have a couple of interesting things that we can implement in classrooms as well. So let's go over the idea of whether we want to or not. When I first realized that my school was open to these things, I was like, yeah, I can do it. Wow, great. Because I used to work in state schools where you wouldn't have that freedom. And I'm sure many of you know that. You work in schools that don't let you experiment, don't let you use your students to learn stuff. But they want you to follow the course book or syllabus or whatever they have laid out for you. I was wondering if I could get a mentor, maybe, because it's a new thing for me and, all that. The answer was no. So you had to do it your way. And this presentation is going to talk about the mistakes I made in one stage of the design thinking. There are many. We'll talk about that in a second. And I was wondering if anybody would volunteer to be my mentor, or maybe if you would find somebody to be your mentor within your school. I know you're not best friends with all of your colleagues, nobody ever is, but maybe there are 2 people who can do this with you. It can be a group thing. And think about what else can help, and then trying it out if you already have the green light from the school. So we're open, the schools are open to ideas, we're ready, we're teachable. We don't have mentors, unfortunately. It is a relatively new thing. So we just are all in it together, experimenting. The water is fine, but it does take courage to jump in. And unless you have other people who are there, it's kind of scary. I'm sure that, you know, with conferences like these, and, you know, if you go and dig through all we have on the internet, you won't feel alone. You will feel mentored. But talking to a proper person, you know, a real person, would really be better. So if you could have somebody to go along with you, that would be great. If not, do it your way. I'm not going to say I did it my way. So what my way meant for me here. So I learned that there are some design thinking basics that I need to know. There are some stages you need to go through, and this is what engineers go through when they think of a new project and, you know, a new product that they want to sell us or, you know, give it to us. So they would understand the problem from customers' perspective. In our case, our customers or our clients are our students. So we would look at what they are struggling with and what we can do about it. We would observe, take notes, define the problem, but nicely define the problem the way you would when you do research. And then start ideating, which means freely coming up with ideas on how to solve the problem that you have. Then you build a solution and you test the solution and then go to previous phases if you need to, and you probably do. Now, the QR code there is for this lovely design thinking for schools poster. I think design thinking is something we can learn together with the students. If you take into consideration that when we had COVID, we kind of were forced to learn how to teach online. And although it was a struggle and, you know, it didn't work as easy as we wanted it to, it did work out in the end, and we are better at it. Our students are better at learning online. So, but it was, there was this period where it was okay to make mistakes because everybody was making mistakes. So I think we are now in that period with design thinking in education. So I think this is the time when both students and you can go step by step through something new and see if it works out for you and for your classroom. Does it solve any of the problems that you have? So ideation, is that just brainstorming? Yes and no. Very often when we do writing, we want students to brainstorm the ideas and then group them and then do something with, right? So kind of like process writing. Unfortunately, a lot of us here are a generation that did not have process writing. We had product writing. People did not teach us how to write. We are self-taught most of the time. And I'm sure that you're not that kind of a teacher. So we're going to go and see what mistakes I did when I tried to do brainstorming right, or ideation actually right. And then if we could do it differently. So how about starting with the negative? How might we make our teaching unsuccessful? So this is me doing the devil's advocate thing here and asking you to not think of how might we make teaching successful, but what can we do to mess it up? Let's be negative. Let's be those people who always criticize an idea and, you know, who have ideas how to do it wrong. Your teenagers or young adults will like this very much. Not, of course, this topic. This is the topic for you. You can ask something else of them, maybe. How might we make our school more fun or less fun? Because we're going into the negative. So negative brainstorming. If we say an idea that we don't actually think, we're playful. If we're playful, the brain has a chance to come up with some ideas that we can later reverse. So we start with the negatives, we get to about 20 negative ideas, and then we try to make the positives out of that, building an idea of an idea. So an idea gives birth to another idea. That's what this is all about. So you don't complete at the same time. That's very important. All the negatives first, and then switching to the positive. Now, when I tried that for the first time, I made a mistake of assuming that, for example, this thing, there is a new law demanding teachers to come to class 20 minutes late. Okay, so this was a negative example of how to make schools successful and efficient. We just want to be late and waste time, and if my students, and they did, just did the grammar version of the negative. So they would say, there isn't, or they would say, there is a new law demanding teachers to come on time. So they would make one thing opposite of what it was, and they felt that they did the assignment. That didn't get us anywhere. The idea was not to get the same idea in a mirror. The idea was to get a better new idea. And we were hoping for something like, there is a new policy that we have greeters of the day, and you're welcomed at the door by a joke, a quote, a hug. From the community, and everybody wants to be a part of a group. Really, we people are social animals. So I don't know if hugs are acceptable in your schools, but you do see videos of a lot of teachers greeting the students at the door with a special hug or a clap or their own original greeting. So maybe that could help. I'm sure that would help. So this was my first mistake, thinking that I will just say, make a negative idea a positive one, and it would not turn into a grammar exercise. Now, the reason why it did turn into a grammar exercise is because that's what we normally do with them. These students are products of grammar translation. So these things, sentence transformation is something they did more of than brainstorming or anything similar, like ideating. My second mistake was just sitting and letting people think. So they have their prompt. I told them what to do. And I think that they all need just to focus. They need some peace and quiet, and everything will be okay. Sometimes it was. Sometimes some groups needed cheering. Some people enjoyed music in the background. Some people asked for it. So my idea, I'm a person who gets ideas when things are nice and quiet, when nobody's bothering me, but not everybody is like that. So I kind of forgot that. That was my second mistake. So classrooms can be quiet or can be noisy if people down the corridor, down the hall don't mind. Now, this is the second thing I did wrong. I thought that this was something that students should do on their own and that I should only be facilitating, but not giving examples of my own, not doing that because I was afraid they would say, aha, this is the kind of thing she wants. So they would try to please the teacher, and then we don't have original ideas. Then it doesn't go anywhere really. So that's not what we were hoping for. So I was trying not to participate, but I noticed that when in some groups I did participate, it worked out. People did not think my idea was better than theirs. And it did push them into working off my idea. So I don't know, I just had to dare, and I did. I'm not doing that all the time though, but sometimes when I feel they're stuck, I would go and write my own example as well. And this is what the flowers were for. So you've noticed the flowers I've got, the roses. This is an example of me not knowing that students need to be taught how to do feedback. you would assume that if they look at a rubric, they know how to give feedback, that they can do this questioning inside the head and then just write to their fellow classmate what could be done better, or what was great. What happened was people would just write, "This is fantastic, congratulations," or things like that, or smiley faces, or "good job," or something very general like, "You should work on your vocabulary," whatever that meant, right? So we were trying to be more specific, and I tried to teach them this feedback technique. It's basically a picture of a rose, but as we all know, roses have thorns, which would be the negative things that we need to be aware of. Yeah, and they're the buds. So there's the potential in something that needs to be developed further, and then the rose, the perfect part, if you will. So students could have a picture and then label it rosebud thorn, and then put ideas for this specific assignment, or these ideas that they brainstormed, which one of them is the rose, which one is the bud, and which one is the thorn. A funny thing is that this is a technique used in business. So somebody saw there was money in it. So there are places where you could actually buy Post-it notes in these shapes of a rose, bud, and a thorn. Not in Uzbekistan, obviously, but interesting as an idea. So that was one thing. Another thing, fifth mistake was something that Kate mentioned: feeling embarrassed, feeling intimidated, fear of losing face, especially when you work with adults who are already respected in their fields, and now they're learning something new, and they're surrounded by people who they want to leave a good impression on. They would be very careful of what they say. So the idea is that we try to explain that it's not a big deal, that no mistakes are bad. No, sorry, there are no ideas that are bad, and we would go from big to small. So the party exercise asks students to think of something completely crazy. Once you get that crazy out of the way, you'll get back to normal. So the exercise goes like this. You are given $50,000 to make a fantastic party by your administration for next weekend. What are you going to do? And then people start giving ideas. At some point, you encourage them more by saying, you've just spent $500. What else can you do? So we get bigger and wilder. People start losing this fear that they're going to say something silly, because by now, everybody else is saying something silly. And then you just come with a sad face and say, unfortunately, the management has decided that there have to be some cuts. So the party is going to be organized, but you only have $500 in your budget. And then people have to think small. That is an interesting exercise. So they still think of, how are people going to have fun? Or how are we still going to use balloons, but in a cheaper way, or, or even free, where can we get free balloons? Or so we get to something nice and rational. And even if it's not, it's going to be downsized, if you will. Sixth mistake, I've noticed, not just in my students, but also in me, that when I think of an idea, I like that idea so much. It's my baby, and I don't want to give it away. And I think it's the best idea. And I feel my job is to persuade everybody else that this is the idea we're going with. Unfortunately, statistically, the most successful idea for the project is probably not going to be the one you suggested, or the one, if you have several, the one that you're most proud of. So learning how to let go is a big thing. So there is a solution to that. We would start, so this is another mistake, with suggesting something that maybe doesn't sound silly, but you know it has never been done in the school. And you're wondering if the society is ready for it, if the class is ready for it. The idea that kind of solves all of these problems is you would ask students to write the wildest idea and their favorite idea on 2 separate pieces of Post-it notes. And then they would go around the classroom talking about one and the other, but not saying which one's which. So just suggesting those 2 ideas as their ideas, defending them, giving the characteristics, giving the positives, the negatives, and all that. And then you let the class decide which one to keep, which one not to keep. So all of the ideas end up on the board, and then there is an elimination process. So then you don't have to worry, because if the idea is that wild and that crazy, nobody will accept it. And then if you thought that it was, or if it gets accepted, that maybe it's not as wild and as crazy as you thought. Now, what else can help? We are sometimes very insecure. I know I am when it comes to something that I don't think I'm an expert in, or you know, that it's something that I don't know, that I'm worse than average. So thinking in a logical way, analyzing, synthesizing, all that we had to do for writing courses, I don't feel very, you know, strong at those skills. So there's something called self-limiting belief. And these are some, let's call them dark glasses, that prevent you from seeing things the way they are. They stop you going into places because you feel they're very dangerous. It's too dark for you, you can't see. So for example, I haven't studied design thinking at college and I cannot teach it. Well, I'm sure you're trying to teach creative thinking or critical thinking, but you didn't have a class called critical thinking or creative thinking. So there's no way that you cannot teach design thinking as well if you want to, considering how many things are out there, especially with brainstorming and ideation, because it's kind of something you have done before. It's just important that as teachers, we continue to be non-dismissive. So no idea killers. And you can look at some on the left. Saying these things to the student would, you know, would make them believe that their idea is not heard, that they are not heard, and it will not get them come to maybe a great idea. So all ideas are viable in this stage. Later on, you get to decide which one really, really makes sense and which one you want to go with for your project. So let's not be dismissive in the beginning. And if you want research and you're wondering what they're saying, take a look. So what this basically tells us is think, pair, share is a good strategy. So let the individuals think and come up with ideas. Then let the groups hear them and select the one that's going to work out. And it's probable that your students who came up with a certain idea are not going to choose their own later on. So we'll have to let the group as a group decide whether it's something interesting or not. out of shyness or, you know, trying to be modest and all that. So one last thing I wanted to mention is, I don't know if it's a thing in your countries, these kids are trying to imitate the train, going round, making train sounds. And it's just a game for children. But for ideation, I like to do it as students line up and they come to the board, write the idea, and move on. While they're moving, they have a chance to think up of a new idea before their turn comes again. So that's something, yeah, and of course the first person goes to the back. It is something that maybe would work because you get the blood pumping, the brain gets the oxygen they need, they have the processing time. It was fun the couple of times that I did it. Sometimes we got great ideas, sometimes not. You have to complement it with another technique, but it's something to do. See if you can do. Start with that, if nothing else. If nothing of the other ideas was, you know, something you would be interested in trying. I'd like to thank you for trying to do ideating, because that can lead to good solutions, whether in technology, whether in classrooms. And if you don't have any help, if you don't have anybody to mentor you, have you become a mentor to your students, and that will teach you in the process. Trust me, nothing scary to it at all. That's it. That's all I've got for you. Thank you very much. Now, if anybody has a question, I'll go down the chat now. So let's see.
Thank you so much. This was fun. I love that. Make the negative ideas first. I love that. Lots of fun ways to get people to think outside the box.
Yeah. I mean, I don't teach anybody in, you know, those practical fields, but, you know, and I don't have a practical mind, but I still think that we're clever enough to come up with ideas as crazy as they can get. And then something good will come out of it.
Yeah, sometimes our departments need some crazy ideas to shake things up, you know. They definitely have, you know, supervisors who like to do things the way that it's been done.
That's playing it safe, but you know what they say, if you do the same things you did before, you get the same results you got before. So
Yeah. So I found some questions in the chat box.
Thanks,
Thank you very much for your presentation. Ainura Jakmarova from Kyrgyzstan, she says that design thinking is really important for nowadays, especially for PBL, project-based learning, and IBL. So group work, what do you think about this?
Well, she just made the statement that it's
in general, I mean that.
Yeah, well, I would agree. I chose it for my topic, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just think that we can start taking it apart the way I did it. So if we feel uncertain that we can get a project through from A to Z, right? Or Z, we can start with little phases here and there, an activity here and there, and then connect the dots for the first project. It's not going to work, you know, beautifully, but it's going to work. And then later on, you can do it the right way, as you would for process writing, for example. So it does take getting used to. And I'm sure that's the problem with process writing too, because our students were told that all it matters is that you bring me a good essay at the end, you submit a good essay. I don't have to see your drafts. And that's our problem now with ChatGPT and all other things, because we don't get to see the drafts, we don't see the changes, we don't see the process, which means maybe the process never happened. Maybe we just, you know, plagiarized something because the topic was convenient. So I'm now answering another person's question. But yeah. So to start fighting the plagiarism, to start fighting ChatGPT, one, see the advantages of it, like we did for the calculator. But then, like the calculator, you would not let students use it for 2 times 2. you
Mhm.
know. So let the brains develop as well.
Thank you very much. There are a lot of many thanks for you for the wonderful presentation. I do have a question. So while you were observing or just defining your mistakes that you have mentioned, so how long did it take and how did you work? Because the same I did with when I started teaching children with special needs.
Mhm.
I was on the every time, so I observed myself, tried to find what was good, what went well or bad. So how long did it take for you, and how?
A year.
Yeah, a year.
Yeah, last school year. The
Mhm.
thing is, luckily in our profession, we very often have these seminars for teachers, and we also have lunch seminars at my institution. So it makes you do the reflection. I've been a teacher for a long time, and I understand the importance of reflection.
Yeah.
But we don't get to do it. We don't really get to do it unless forced.
Mhm.
And this is kind of forcing us. The fact that you have other people who are expecting to hear from you, who are willing to chat with you about a topic until you come to a resolution. This is something that, you know, if you don't have your professional network, you have to build it, and then, you know, learning comes there, happens there.
Yeah. And you try to anticipate those mistakes, yeah?
Well, you know, you know yourself. So, you know, I was afraid that I would jump in because my nature is not to sit still. So knowing your students and knowing yourself is a part of it. But
Mhm.
then sometimes it's very unpredictable because it's a new thing. It's a new beast. So you don't know how it's going to behave. And, you know, as teachers, we do a lot of improvising. So we go with the flow. And then when things happen, we intervene if we have to. But sometimes, you know, sometimes something doesn't go as planned, but it goes well.
Yeah.
So you just let it be.
You're right. Thank you.
Can I manage to correct all my mistakes? No, Gulnara, no, I'm still a human. So no is the answer.
Yeah. I can share. So one of, as I mentioned, in my own professional way. So I had a student with medical disabilities, that was kidney disorders, and just I tried to teach them as ordinary, and of course there were some special education elements as well. But I couldn't see in this student any improvement. And when he was reading kind of blurbing, you know. Then later on, I defined that he has a dyslexia, you know. It really, I felt bad on myself because I spent 8 months of teaching, but I didn't know about these disabilities. So defining mistakes sometimes, you know, make you feel some regret. However, so when you work on it, maybe, yeah, whether.
No, well, it comes from observation. Observation takes time. You know, you have to have a chance to notice something. Plus, I mean, let's face it, when it comes to special needs, you are not the expert. I'm not the expert.
Yeah.
So there are professionals who have good tests for all of these things and can verify what the problem, you know, can notice and verify if that's really if that's dyslexia or this, you know. But yes, we as teachers notice some signs, and then we send them off to somebody who can really test them professionally and then help them. Then we know how to help them if we know what the problem is.
Yeah, thank you. We have again Gulnara Ece. Yes. Could you suggest any strategies of working worse, hyperactive, and lack of attention span students? Do you have such a kind of students?
I think we're using the word hyperactive and attention span very easily nowadays, maybe a bit too easily. I don't think that everybody who doesn't sit for 45 minutes completely still is somebody with ADHD. But if it's somebody, as we said, if it's somebody who has that diagnosed, then there is probably a professional at school who can guide you into how to help them, and then you can learn more about this specific need. I just feel that maybe we want kids to sit down for too long to pay attention to something that is honestly not interesting for too long. And you can see us as adults. I mean, here we are listening to each other, but sometimes we're just like, okay, it's an online conference. I cannot take it anymore. I have to go and drink water. I'm not thirsty. My brain is just not there, right? So if that's us, imagine a kid's world where, you know, there's a lot going on upstairs, and, you know, it's very hard to focus on something, especially when they're so accustomed to multi verses and all these videos and things that we didn't have. It's harder for them than it was for us. But so we criticize them because we judge them very often by our standards. Like, I was just sitting still and listening to the teacher. Why can't you, right? So I'm afraid that we're trying to do what our teachers did, and it just doesn't work now. So let's give it a go with these things that we are learning from seminars. Let's read a little bit. Let's talk to parents if they've noticed something about the kid. Let's talk to specialists at school. As a class teacher, you can only do so much, but let's do that little.
Thank you very
This one was
much.
really fun. I took a bunch of screenshots. Really appreciate your presentation.
Thanks, Miriam.
And
I appreciate it.
thanks to everybody who has stuck with us this whole time. That's wonderful. Late night and back to work tomorrow, right? For everybody. But
Let
thank
us-
everyone. We have a-
I would like to suggest before going, so to have a group photo again for today's, and if it's possible, please turn on your cameras. Yeah. Thank you. We appreciate all of your participation. Great. I'm going to take a photo. Okay. So you can say hello, show some emotions. Yeah. So thank you. So yeah, waiting. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Good. One more time. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. And in this mode, Manisha, do you have anything to say?
I cannot thank enough. I think that can go on, but it was really fun. You guys made it worth every bit. I hope to see you guys in November. So if you want to present again, you were inspired today. Doesn't have to be something big, you know, small innovations, small things. Just present it, and we're like a, you know, little learning community. We can sort of churn those ideas around and do something crazy like Maria did. I wanted her to change her title, and she said, nope, I want that title. So, you know, and now I see why, because I couldn't see the broader picture. So we can all continue learning and learn together. There's nothing better than that. So keep your little ideas. You know, I like to say that every teacher has a story. So save on those stories, make a note of those stories. Those little stories could be inspiring, you know. So bring those stories with you. Send it to Muqaddas or me, and I'll see you.
Yeah.
We'll all see you. I'm going to put it in the chat, November. And Muqaddas, confirm it's 18th and 19th, right?
Yes. This year, on November 18th and 19th, we are going to have Design Thinking Education Conference, fourth cohort, I can say. So this conference was just small idea when we just started working with online world learning, Manisha, Miriam, and Barbara. And then you see, so now we have the third, fourth continuation. Hopefully one day we will have, it will be hybrid, in person, maybe in Kyrgyzstan or in America or somewhere else. So we can pass. You are welcome to join us. And I just would like to say again, thank you for all of you. And usually I do like this. So we should praise ourselves, just put on your hands on your shoulder and praise yourself. Good job. Because we did it. Manisha, you have to do it post her because she was the first. Put it, yeah. Thank you very much. Have a nice day, night, good night, yes. And see you soon. And welcome to apply for our next conference. And we appreciate our presenters, participants, everyone. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good luck. And thank you, Agnes.